Okay, you know more or less where we are. We are basically trying to give webinars, very concrete webinars during the short sessions of 1 hour, 1 hour and a half from the framework of the EU4Advice project and COREnet project. We are working together in creating a network of advisors in short food supply chain, but also in helping the policymakers in this sector, so we can overcome barriers of that can be solved with regulation changes or only adaptation of regulation, or maybe even interpretation of regulation, or different focuses of the policy. We are in the EU4Advice. We've been working since October 22. We'll be working till September 27. We are working for the 27 member states. This is something we're very clear. We try to work with every country in every language. We are 21 partners from 13 European countries, and we are also based our work a lot in 4 living labs. I want you to know this because the living labs have been very interesting for us, and they are a very interesting tool. And those living labs are set up in Spain, Hungary, Netherlands, and Ireland, with different contexts of the short food supply chain and different targets also. So they are a very useful experimental tool to be able to understand what the advisors need, what the agents, all the different actors of the short food supply chain are demanding, and also to understand how training, for instance, is should be adapted to their situations. No, we work very closely with our twin project COREnet, and we are building together the short food supply chain advisory network, which is up to now more than 600 people involved, has more than 600 people involved and growing. And I obviously recommend all of you, please, to register if you haven't, because it's going to mean that you're going to get all this information about our webinars, and also being able to also provide information through surveys and through impactful forums that we're going to be organizing. Okay, we're trying to work also on capacity building. Therefore, we concentrate a lot on training. Next slide, please, Louise. Okay, so some of our results that we are looking for are the advisor network itself to go on after the projects and during the projects will be as active as possible. The integration of these short food supply chain advisors as recognized in national acquis, which are the agriculture knowledge innovation systems, which are now being evolving in the different countries and are the ones that really should be helping the advisors find their place and find their recognition, and also to find each other, which is one of the aims of our project. So for us, it's important that national acquis are very much aware of the advisor of the short food supply chain advisor needs, and where they are, who they are, their profile, and so on. We also working a lot on training content, specific training contents, tools and methods, so we can really help these advisors, which are usually very under the radar and not so much recognized at EU level. We're working a lot with tackling governance and regulatory barriers. This webinar is part of this the work, and we do this with COREnet and in a very integrated way. Policy recommendations is finally one of the results of our project, and to enhance the short food supply chain regulatory framework, everything related to advice and the integration in the acquis system. Okay, so these are our targets. And now I would also want to introduce who's going to be in the panel, and what is going to be the order of the participation. First of all, we're going to have Christian Jochum, who's a senior expert in food chain and an agronomist who's been working for more than 35 years in the at the Austrian Chamber of Agriculture. His expertise goes from food quality, food promotion, food legislation, and short food supply chain. So in the past 20 years, he's been one of the most active members of many working groups at the European Commission. and also through Copa Cogeca, as well as the Austrian board and committees. He's a great expert in short food supply chain, and especially he's had a lot of experience with the flexibility hygiene of the hygiene rules to adapt to short food supply chain. So we're very happy to have Christian here. Christian is also a member of the COREnet network of the partnership, and he'll be introducing the Austrian experience. In the roundtable, we have Mirta Alessandrini, who's assistant professor of agri-food law in Wageningen University Research. She specializes in legal dimensions of sustainability transition in agro-food systems, and she's also academic coordinator for the food law and regulatory affairs specialization in Wageningen University Research with the Master's Food Safety Program. Her recent book, which is so important for us, is Regulating Short Food Supply Chain in the EU, explores EU legal frameworks for local food system. That's one of the reasons, obviously, we have her here, and we're so happy to have her. Thank you, Mirta. Okay, next is Ángel Nepomuceno. He's head of the health district of Albacete in Spain, and he's been an inspector with more than 15 years of experience in flexibility issues related to the hygiene package in small establishments. He coordinates a team of 13 official inspectors and serves as an external advisor for Face Network and COREnet, which is European and Spanish artisan cheese and dairy producer networks. Ángel has been very involved in discussions on regulatory flexibility with the European Commission and the Spanish Agency of Food Safety. So he's a very relevant person to be in the panel. So thank you so much, Ángel. Looking forward to listening to your experience. Okay, next we have Margaux Rusalen. She's project officer for farmhouse products and for short food supply chains in the network of chambers of agriculture in Paris. Okay, in France. She specializes in agro-food science with a focus on food formulation, quality, hygiene, and safety. She currently coordinates the technicians at the national level, supporting farmers also in the diversification on farm processing and short supply chain cells. Previously, she's worked as a product manager in an insect-based protein pet food company. So very heterogeneous, but also now a key point in the French sphere supporting short food supply chain. Finally, Françoise Morizot-Braud, director of the Center of Studies and Research on this diversification in France. She brings 30 years of experience advising farms processing workshops, including poultry slaughtering, meat cutting, and vegetable processing. She co-leads the local food RMT regulations group, with which they will be talking about, I hope, both François and Margaux in the future. And she has extensively worked on adapting health regulations to farm workshops from the local and from the farm. So thank you very much to all of you. Now I am going to I'm going to leave Christian start with his presentation. Maybe we should stop sharing and let Christian share, if that's okay.
So, can you see the presentation?
Not yet, but it's coming. There it is.
In the presentation mode?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, good morning, everybody. I've already been introduced. I will also skip the first slide. The message is I was lucky to follow closely and contribute to the European discussion on the big pieces of food legislation in the past more than 20 years. And I will come back to some important legal regulations which make the baseline for the specific rules on short food supply chains, which I will explain in detail. The first message is that food legislation, which regards the law and the paragraphs, is competence of the European Union, mainly because of the internal market. So in looking back in 1998, the first drafts to harmonize hygiene legislation were started. But in 2000, 2001, the second BSE scandal came. So these discussions were interrupted, and the focus was laid on the regulation 178, also called as General Food Law. The law as a piece of legislation is relatively short and simple compared to other regulations. There are important definitions. One, I will come back to it later, is the definition of retail, which also includes short supply chains and gastronomy. There are the principles of food safety laid down, and the EFSA is established based on this regulation 178. The principles are simple and clear. The first is food must be safe, of course. The responsibility of food safety lies on the side of the business operators, not on the side of the authorities. It's the food industry which is responsible for food safety. To reach this objective, they shall devise a safe system for supplying food. There is one important message which says that risk must be assessed and managed, this so-called risk-based approach, also a very important principle for implementation, and that it's up to the member states to enforce food law and to maintain a control system. And as a top-up, a traceability system has to be installed in the case of an unsafe food to be able to trace back where a food is coming from or where it's going to. In 2003, the discussion on the hygiene package were finished. The hygiene package was published in 2004 and came into force in 1st of January 2006. There are options for simplification and the legal enforcement. In the three council regulations replaced 17 directives which were in place before and very complicated and confusing. The hygiene package consists of three pieces: the general hygiene, so-called H1, the animal hygiene on animal products, called H2, and a third regulation, which in the meantime has been replaced by a huge council regulation on all aspects of official controls, which was published in 2017. The exemptions in the general hygiene are, as a principle, all private activities. So what you're doing at home is not covered by EU legislation. And the direct supply by the producer of small quantities of primary products to the final consumer or to local retail establishments, which are directly supplying the final consumer, which is more or less a description of SFSCs. They are exempted by the hygiene, which does mean that food safety has to be applied, but the rules of H1 are not need not to be applied in these two cases. The requirements are also describing the crucial elements which in practice make problems and difficulties and costs for small food producers. So you have to establish procedures based on the hazard principles together with the application of good hygiene practice. But what I have already said, it's the responsibility of the food business operator. Then two aspects regarding temperature. And also an important principle that, of course, you have to do laboratory checks of your food, which in practice, depending on how you implement it and interpret it, leads also to high costs if it's too complicated. A second important aspect which is laid down in the H1 is that every food business operator has to be registered, which means it's a notification to the authorities what the food business operator is doing, just that they know he, she is existing and what's the business about. There is a higher level, that's a so-called approval. The approval is mandatory for all activities under H2, when it comes to animal products, which means you have to apply for an allowance that you can start your business. In practice, it means more intensive checks, more red tape, more bureaucracy. Also, an important principle laid down in H1 is that it's an option and a recommendation to member states that they shall introduce national guides, but, and that's important, these guides shall be developed and disseminated by the food business sectors, not by the authorities. It should be the industry, the business, which should care about it. And there are two annexes. One is dealing with primary production, and the second with all other activities covering the main details for SFSCs. Regarding the regulation on animal products, animal food products, also called H2, there is an exemption that the direct supply by the producer of small quantities, it's important, small quantities of meat from poultry and lagomorphs slaughtered on the farm to the final consumer or to local establishments are exempted from H2 and shifted to H1, where, so to say, the world is a little bit easier and simpler. There is another option that member states can shift establishments which are registered as which are estimated as retail, can be shifted from H2 to H1. What I said, the same principles regarding food safety, but the procedure is much simpler. There is an option to member states that they can implement simpler rules for traditional methods and accommodate it to special geographic constraints. And also an important principle, all exemptions which are developed and implemented on the national level have to be notified and justified to the Commission. Since a few years, there is a new simplification which allows mobile slaughtering of a limited number of animals outside an official abattoir, which also makes life easier for especially the cattle sector. These regulations I just explained in a very short and quick manner are accomplished by Commission regulations and Commission guidelines, etc. Coming to the Austrian reality, what we did. Of course, we had, as every member state, to align EU legislation with national laws or national regulations. And in Austria, we have a specific Codex Alimentarius with guidelines, and we had to align all these existing national rules with the EU legislation. Secondly, we, from the beginning, as I was well aware on all these options to member states, we, at the beginning, which means in 2005, we negotiated with our national authorities the options for exemptions. Then we implemented these exemptions and simplifications to national laws. And based on that, we developed national guidelines for small producers, for local distribution and traditional methods, which is important. We did it on the initiative of the sector representation, where where I was working for is the Chamber of Agriculture, but we did it together with the Chamber of Commerce because butchers and small commercial food operators are also affected by these rules. We included, of course, experts, sector experts, scientists, practitioners, and of course also the authorities. And we reached that these national guidelines were officially published by the Ministry of Health, which is in Austria, in charge of all the food legislation. The important judicial elements of these implementing constructions were that small food business holdings are estimated as retail, which means that it's just a registration instead of an approval. Which means we have the same goals, the same objectives, parameters, etc., but it's less bureaucratic. What is not covered by this shift from H2 to H1 is slaughtering, is school milk, is egg processing, and is ice cream. So the real hygienically sensitive sectors are still have to be approved and are under H2. What we reached with this simplification was less documentation, which means working protocols, that we developed a pre-completed hazard forms with standard manufacturing procedures, which are more or less everywhere similar, and the producer just has to sign it, which means officially, yes, I have understood it and I'm following this procedure. So we don't give them an empty sheet of paper to devise a self-control system. We said, look, we have something which is ready to use. Then we developed, based on that, instruction manuals in case of a deviation, because in practice, if you have a small producer and there is a mistake, he needs guidance what to do in the case of a deviation. And we developed an instruction manual together with experts what he or she should do in this case. Regarding the risk-based approach, we argued that it's possible to reduce the number of food analysis depending on the produced quality and depending on the category of products you are processing, which helps a lot because food analysis is costly, is complicated, and you receive a test result and you are unable to interpret it and to read it. So that's also a core element of the simplification in Austria. And a specific aspect, which in the case of meat is important, that what is foreseen in the EU food hygiene legislation, that slaughtering and cutting can be done in the same premises if there is a cleaning in between, which helps a lot regarding investments in premises. But, and everybody actually is talking about deals. We also made a deal with the ministry. We said, look, if we reduce documentation, we put a focus on more information and motivation of the involved persons. So what we did, we in parallel created a comprehensive national training and education program with the objectives to empower the advisors to explain the rules to the practitioners in the same way as the food inspectors on the other side are controlling the same rules. We are since more than 20 years in a permanent exchange between authorities and stakeholders to clarify uncertainties. There are always problems, uncertainties, specific cases. And we are executing a monitoring of the SFSC sector to be sure that the food safety is really achieved. How did we do that? We produced manuals based on the official guidelines. We developed scripts for hygiene training days for practitioners, where we also included the regional food authorities. We organized train the trainer. All the material is accessible on a specific website for all practitioners, for the authorities, for everybody. We developed specific train the trainer courses for our colleagues so that they are in a harmonized way advising the content of the rules. And in the meantime, we had regular coordination meetings on the national, but also on the regional level, so that both sides are talking about the same requirements. And in the meantime, we developed webinars, videos. We have also an online hygiene knowledge test, which is acknowledged by the authorities. So to avoid that persons have to sit in overheated training rooms just to hear the same what they have already heard for several times. What's worth mentioning, we offered investment aids to subsidize the necessary adaptation to higher minimum standards via the rural training development program. We integrated all these courses in the calendar of the rural training institutes, which are established all over Austria to improve the dissemination and to reach all the practitioners. We were always in parallel putting political pressure to express that that small food business operators should be kept alive. In the meantime, we have reached a public commitment that in agricultural policy, SFSCs play an important role. And to be, so to say, on the safe side, there are official statistics by the Ministry of Health saying that SFSCs are by far the best group regarding all official controls of all food categories controlled, and that everybody knows that we are on the safe side. So our activities are reaching its objectives. To be realistic and not too over-optimistic, we used the exemptions and simplifications provided by EU legislation. That was key. We invested in knowledge transfer as compensation for less red tape. That's something which is indispensable. Without these activities, it wouldn't have worked. We integrated the officials on all levels of programs and activities. That's on the one hand psychologically clever, but it works depending, of course, on the persons involved. You have to install a permanent monitoring to be sure that your measures are effective. We installed an informal clearing procedure on the regional level when it comes to problem or uncertainties. What also has to be said, unwilling or illiterate operators have to be treated differently. So if somebody is not willing or able to understand what's necessary, you have to change the methodology. And you need resources on a longer time span so that you can provide what I have just explained to you. To be critical, of course, there are always individual food inspectors who deviate from the agreed material with the approach, I am the law. So it's me who is defining what's mandatory. That bureaucrats in general tend to underestimate desktop work for people who are manually working. It's just this form and just this checklist, but it's not one checklist, it's 20 checklists. That's the problem. That bureaucrats overestimate the relevance of documentation. They are believing more in the protocol, regardless whether the food is safe or not. And that training programs not always reach those who need it most. So the problematic candidates often do not appear at the seminars or do not use our training material. Closing and showing some a short sample of pictures. That's a modern processing kitchen installed in a traditional farmhouse, subsidized by a rural development program focused on plant products. That's what we were developing for this self-monitoring system for specific sectors. And to give you an example, that it's not the hardware like stainless steel, which is decisive. It's the way how you treat it. That's a very old, very traditional method of cheese making in the Alpine regions. So during summer, not still really used, but theoretically, if it's look at the copper kettle, if it's cleaned, then it's hygienic. That's a more modern version of the 1980s or 1990s, replaced in the meantime by premises like these, which are modern and also subsidized by the rural development program. So it's a couple of approaches who led at the end to what I presented to you. So thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you so much, Christian. So interesting. I hope we can go back to some of the things through the chat, because I can see that already there's been quite a lot of questions put in the chat. And then as you're going to be able to also participate in the roundtable, then things can also come out during the roundtable. So thank you so much. Okay, let's proceed then with the roundtable. I would like, if it's possible, Elise, to share the questions so everybody can be aware of what we're asking to our colleagues. And I would like to ask Mirta to start with her position on what has been your finding in this in your experience. Is it more an issue of regulation, or is it an issue of interpretation or implementation that we have as a barrier to flexibility? What would be the challenges still encountered by regarding flexibility, hygiene regulation, especially related to short food supply chain, but we're also talking about any small producer, and what kind of solutions could we think of, and who can provide those solutions? So lots of questions in one, please, Mirta.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patricia. But also thank you, Christian. I think you gave a very comprehensive overview also of the theoretical framework on small farmers and short food supply chains. So it's for me, it's a great assist. So I would say that this is fundamentally an interpretation problem by, of course, competent authorities, but not just competent authorities at the national level, but mostly regional and municipal levels, because when you look at the food hygiene package, what you should see is that there is a legal tool. The legal tool exists, but this provides, let's say, a minimum harmonization standard. So it does not provide an harmonized interpretation for the authorities. And I think that Christian really highlights this. The first degrees of exemptions for small farmers in his presentation, because you should know that there are three, let's say, tools targeting small farmers in this regulations. First is exclusions, then it's derogation from specific legal requirements, and then it's adaptations. And I think it's very interesting to look at all these three elements to understand what is the problem of the interpretation problem here. So the regulation says, well, we exclude from the scope of the regulation the direct supply by the producer of, let's say, small quantities of primary products to the final consumer. And I think there are three key elements here. First of all, the direct supply and then the small quantities, because the exemptions, the regulation fails to define what constitutes a direct supplies and what constitutes a small quantities. And this, of course, it's made of purpose, because as I said, this we talk about a minimum harmonization requirements, and of course it's up to the member states to define what is a small quantity according to the national legislation. What does mean a direct supply? Should we consider the short food supply chain as businesses, small farm businesses? Should we consider them as retailers? As Christian pointed out, what is the best strategy there? But it's interesting to see that, of course, in Austria, we saw very interesting and very virtuous case studies, but in other member states, because food safety, of course, is our final aim for food legislation, then mostly member states adopts a more risk adverse and more restrictive readings of this legislation, of the flexibility. For instance, there are some countries, I'm Italian, so I will make the example of Italy, that demands even more strict requirements. For instance, in the case of direct supply in small quantities, that the national law says, well, actually, for the flexibility rules to be applicable, then the activity should be, let's say, marginal and of an occasional nature. So it's excluding regular farm gate sales, for instance, from the definition of these flexibility rules. Then we have, and this connects to the second point, the restrictive interpretation of derogation for small farm food businesses. I think there's the regulation provides some derogation for technical requirements and also from the HACCP obligations that must be detailed at the national level. And I think the solution that Austria found is really brilliant, because actually what is required by the European law is that the small farmers still have to demonstrate that these alternative measures achieve the same equivalent level of food safety, and this is not always easy to demonstrate, and the member states should support the food business operators in doing so, because as you saw, I mean, all the responsibility is on the shoulders of the food business operators. It doesn't matter if it's big or small, and then the last point I would like to make is that there is a limited practical use of this adaptational mechanism that is included in the food hygiene regulation, especially for traditional practices, because there is an adaptation clause in the hygiene regulation that allows member states to adjust these technical hygiene requirements for small businesses using traditional methods. This is a way for the European legislator to recognize the cultural, economic, but also sometimes environmental value of these techniques. But of course, this flexibility is constrained by there is a complex notification approval that the member states must do involving the Commission. So in practice, this discourages national authorities from adapting this tailored measures. So as a European food lawyer, of course, that will give you my perspective on that to conclude that I would say that it's very important it's true that the law gives minimum harmonization standards, but I would say that it's equally important that the harmonized guidelines on how to interpret this term and the application of flexibility provision is provided also to the member states. So then, of course, we have harmonized guidance that can be adjusted at the national level, but at least we have a common starting point for that, on the basis of which this national, let's say, good hygiene practices guides can be provided. And also, I'm a fan of this participatory regulatory processes. I think it's very important to involve small businesses voices in developing this guidance, because so that we can know what is their obstacles, and we can try to overcome that. I hope this answered partially to the question.
Yes, Mirta, of course. It was very interesting to see a little bit higher up and see what the problems of the national administration also are. So yes, it's definitely very insightful, and thank you for your time. Yes, we'll come back to that with more questions, I'm sure. And next, I'll be giving the floor to Angel Nepomuceno, please, Angel. Would you answer these questions? Do you need them to be read again, or can you go ahead?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Patricia, and thank you, Christian, for your excellent presentation. From my point of view, the main challenges to be addressed nowadays regarding flexibility, of course, has to do with infrastructure and layout, but especially with food with traditional characteristics and the use of traditional methods. There are specific flexibility to be provided for them. Apart from layouts and infrastructure, we have to say something regarding flexibility on the food safety management system that is more interpreted as a burden, as a help. So it has to be flexible, and it has to be decided by the food business operator and not by the competent authority. The use of guides to good hygiene practice, from my point of view, is a solution to this issue. And another important issue to be addressed regarding flexibility is the microbiological criteria, the analysis and the sampling plans. That is a really bad issue to be solved by the small business operator, by the small producer. Flexibility regarding that issue is not well developed, and from my point of view, it has to be studied deeper. So it's a question to be solved. Solutions for those challenges that we have to face nowadays, as the flexibility scheme or framework haven't changed since the entry into force of the regulation. The problem is not the possibility of flexibility, but its development. So from my point of view, the small food business operators should be associated in organizations. They should be more aware, more knowledgeable, more organized. They should be more in contact one with another association to get to know which possibility can they develop in their own cases. For instance, identifying specific issues to be solved in the specific activity, and as well to recognize or to identify specific solutions, proposed solutions. Once that they have this done, they should ask to have some kind of interlocution, to have some possibility to negotiate, to discuss with competent authorities these issues and propose solutions, and ask for this interlocution. Regarding food safety management system, as I have said, the problem should be solved, should be addressed by means of European guides or national guides or sector guides. That should be some solution as regard the small food business, but we have to take into account as well the competent authorities, the official inspectors. This part of the flexibility should be addressed by means of a better understanding of the traditional methods and the food with traditional characteristics, as most or many official inspectors don't really recognize, don't really know, don't really accept the traditional methods of production, and they are reluctant to accept this kind of food, and they always interpret food as made by the industrial way and not the artisan way. They should be as well trained in technology regarding traditional and artisan methods, from my point of view. So that those would be my point of view, my challenges, and my solutions.
Okay, Angel, quite a lot in little time. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm sure we'll be also going back to some of the things you exposed, and very interesting because the infrastructure, biological criteria, this has come out a lot in our discussions in in EU4Advice, because it's true that it's not an easy issue. So yes, I'm sure there'll be more to say about that. Okay, well, next I would like Margaux, please, to intervene, if it's okay.
It's okay. It's okay for me. Maybe to put the French framework so that you may understand. I think it's sometimes very similar to the Austrian case, but in France, so the conditions of exceptions, the flexibilities, and Françoise might complete, of course, or certain conditions, they are specified in the documents. We call them sectorial documents, for example, sectorials for eggs, for slaughterhouses, for milk, etc. And they are completed with technical instructions, but also with vademecum. So that serve the inspectors, but also the technicians to see where are the control points and where are the conditions and what is demanded in a national way of hygiene, food hygiene. And as Christian said, to answer the question, there are always individual food inspectors who might deviate from the agreed material, of course. And this agreed material, these technical instructions, they are not legal, so sometimes it's quite difficult for the producer to intervene in such controls. And for example, we can have barriers of interpretation here in France regarding the farmers, the stores, where there is a technical instruction which is not clear, and this can lead very concretely to misinterpretations on the field, on farmers' stores. And so in this case, we have to organize with the association of producers, with also the chambers of agriculture network, with also farmers stores network, if we work on this subject, to challenge the public administration here on subjects of misinterpretations. And for example, also alongside Françoise, which is working for an association of producers, alongside also the RMT, Alimentation Locale, Shoot for Chain Secrets, RMT network. We have been working with representatives of the Ministry of Agriculture. In France, it's not held by the Ministry of Health as the Austrian case, but it's really the Ministry of Agriculture, which is holding these documents and these guidelines. Also, for example, I see in the assembly that there is Marilou from an association of the milk producers. So we try to negotiate these aspects of the flexibility. We try to propose, offer them documents, offer them our regards on the flexibility interpretations, to negotiate certain aspects of the flexibility. And for example, maybe to conclude, we have been working to develop here very recently the flexibility for egg packaging centers. There was not flexibility here for many years. And for 5 years, this association of producers, the chambers of agriculture, they've been working with the Ministry of Agriculture to develop this kind of flexibility, and also to draft a standard approval file, pre-completed HACCP form, as the Austrian case, to address this issue of misinterpretation as soon as we agreed with the Ministry of Agriculture, who is in charge of the controls of the inspectors. So yeah, yes, I will join maybe Mirta on her conclusion that here the hygiene package delivers, I mean, the performance requirement and not the that you have to be performant and that's it. Sometimes it does not impose any condition, and it gives the producers the responsibility, but also this flexibility. But also sometimes we need guidelines, and that's why we need these national guidelines, and also this constant work with the administration here in France.
Okay, thank you so much, Margaux. I think Christian wants to break the whole system and speak. Yes, go ahead,
Okay.
Christian.
Thank you. As an overall estimation, I would say 1/3 is due to regulation and 2/3 is interpretation. Regarding regulation, I was lucky to really understand in detail judicially what was intended by the legislator, by the Commission, and the Council regarding the rules, because in practice, sometimes we hear the answer, personally, I would be flexible, but unfortunately, legislation does not allow that. So you have to be familiar with the articles and the paragraphs, because otherwise you are not able to negotiate on an equal level with authorities. Regarding interpretation and implementation, to give you an example, what Angel mentioned regarding the sampling issue, we developed for dairy products a list together with experts and scientists, not on our own, a list of 9 categories of dairy products regarding their hygiene risk. And we said, and that's part of the official derogation or simplification rules in Austria, we said if you are producing less than 20,000 kilo of raw milk a year on the farm, you take your product, which is in the highest in the group with the category with the highest risk, and you just send a sample of this product to the laboratory, and if this product is okay, the probability that if the raw milk is coming always from the same cows, processed in the same premises, from the same persons, with the same receipts and recipes and procedures, that all the other products which are less risky are also okay, this probability is very high. And this reduces, if you have products which are falling into 5 categories, reduces the number of samples from 5 to 1. And if you are above 20,000 kilos, you have to send 2 samples of the products of the 2 highest risk categories. And that's something very, very concrete, very simple, and also in line with this risk-based approach, and which you can demonstrate scientifically. And regarding our overall monitoring, this official analysis of all the 46,000 official food controls in Austria proves that the system with this double approach from control and information and motivation and training, that it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. We need to go to Françoise. Please, Françoise, are you ready? If you want to speak French, you have Louise that can try to translate. Louise is our colleague from InnoGestione. She's working on the policy recommendation strategy in EU4Advice, but she's also very nice and she speaks very good French and English. So, Françoise, would you like to share your, or do you want us to share it for you?
I can try to speak English.
Oh, great. Go ahead.
But not very fluently. Yes.
It's okay. We'll see. You decide. You decide if you want to.
Okay? My small association in Burgundy discussed with the French administration since the introduction of European regulation. Then, as a part of local food RMT, since 2017,
10 years, maybe, Françoise?
2015. Oui.
Yes, 15.
And
2015.
flexibility in France we have for dairy product since 2011. And all products except eggs since 2019.
19.
And eggs since 2024.
Okay, just very recently, last year.
We've got, nous avons des seuils.
We have threshold.
Oui, comme, alors excusez-moi, je vais passer en français. Comme pour visiblement en Autriche.
Like in Austria, similar thresholds.
Ouais. La flexibilité pour nous, elle porte comme ce qu'on a entendu. Elle porte sur, excusez-moi, sur les locaux. Nous avons une simplification sur les locaux. La non-obligation de tout enregistrer. On n'écrit qu'en cas de non-conformité.
So they have flexibility measures for different kinds of operators, like local or small producers in some kind of products. Yeah.
Voilà. Et la simplification porte aussi sur le nombre d'analyses et la validation de toutes les durées de vie des produits.
Mm-hmm. So there is different kind of simplification about the use by of the product and different kind of factors. Yes.
Ouais. Alors, il reste, malgré toutes ces avancées depuis 10 ans, il reste encore des points de difficulté pour les producteurs.
There is still some difficulties since the 10 years they have been working on this. There is still barriers and difficulties for operators.
L'interprétation des inspecteurs, comme ça a été déjà mentionné.
The interpretation of the rules by the inspectors.
Les contrôles qui sont arrivés de manière très dure en transformation des végétaux, alors qu'il n'y avait aucun contrôle auparavant.
Mm-hmm. They started with very tough controls on vegetable processed products, which was not the case before. It's new and it's being really difficult for this kind of operators.
Le fait là maintenant de devoir abattre tous les lots de volailles en cas de présence de salmonelle dans un seul lot.
Mm-hmm. So there is also a problem with salmonella. If there is salmonella detected in one batch of slaughtered poultry, they have to slaughter all the whole production.
Donc là, nous, l'objectif, c'est de continuer à travailler, bien sûr, avec l'administration française. Voilà, mais c'est aussi de partager à un niveau européen, notamment cette question de la politique en matière de salmonelle, qui est très, très préventive, mais qui génère des abattages extrêmement importants.
Mm-hmm. So their objective is to keep on working with the French administration, but also to share good practices and insights with other European operators and associations, especially on the question of salmonella, because it's a really preventive measure, which is with a very, very high impact on farms.
Voilà, donc pour nous, les questions actuellement, l'organisation, il y a il y a une bonne organisation, une bonne couverture du côté du conseil et des formations, mais un besoin de développer des guides de bonne pratique, continuer à développer des guides de bonne pratique.
Okay, so there is a good coverage in what concerns the advice and counseling, but there is still guidance and guidelines needed for operators.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Françoise. I understand that you are working in the day-to-day with the farmers and their problems. That's why your view is so important. And we would like to have you participate now in the round of questions and answers, because I'm sure there's going to be more things coming up in the chat and from the other experts. So thank you so much. And let's try to go to the next question very, very briefly, because we have very little time left so we can discuss, which is what we wanted. And it was basically trying to know, which you already, some of you or most of you already talked about, if there are training contents, guidelines, documents we could use, because you were speaking from France, Spain, and Austria, but there are incredibly different situations in the different 27 member states, and it would be so important for us to find good documents, good examples that could be replicable, that could be translated even to other countries, and so we can use it for the rest of the member states. And so that's why I would like to very briefly, please explain if you have, well, Christian already told us, but please, Christian, could you start by Austria? What do you have concerning training and guidelines that we could use, or things that you think could be interesting, tools that could be interesting for the advisors and for the farmers, or even the technicians in this area?
Yeah, to categorize in three parts. On the one hand, we have this all documents and products related to hygiene, food safety, which in the meantime is not really so pressing and demanding as it was in the first years. In the first years, everybody was afraid and very, very cautious or overcautious, but in the meantime, it's a kind of relaxed situation. Secondly, which still is one of the real big bureaucratic problems, is labeling.
Okay.
Correct food labeling, because looking at the number of fines in food controls, 90% is labeling issues. So wrong, missing parts, etc., etc. We developed with a national agency an overall number of 110 or 20 role model labels, where people for all kinds of meat products, fruit products, whatever, can load down from the internet a standard label, just to not forget some parts which have to be integrated in a correct label. So that's the real big, still the big issue. And a third category, people who are dealing with food have to be regularly trained. That's a mandatory rule of food legislation. And it doesn't make sense if it's the same person to force them to participate in long-lasting hygiene days. So as mentioned, we developed an online tool which was developed within this training program, officially acknowledged. So it was not just imposed by our side. We said, look, that's the way how we would execute it. And it was acknowledged. And it's used as a simple, it takes, I think, 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And at the end, you receive a kind of a certificate, which is officially given by the Rural Training Institute, and this certificate is accepted by the authorities. So that's something which makes life much easier for practitioners.
Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you so much, Christian. Okay, what about well, I don't know if Mirta has anything because you're not in that sphere. If it's okay, I just skip you, whatever you think.
No, we'll leave the floor to the others.
Okay, okay. So that's the Angel, please. What can you provide from concerning training and contents that we could use?
Well, more than saying something about specific training programs, I would say that there are training for official inspectors, both at the European level. We have the Better Trainings for Safer Food initiative with lots of sessions for official inspectors all over Europe. As well, at the national level, we have training programs at the national level and mostly at the regional level. We have specific training programs for official inspector. Each regional government has its own program, and I have imparted a lot of training courses for official inspector here in Spain. Regarding those training programs, for official inspector, they should focus, from my point of view, mostly in the possibility of flexibility regarding the regulations, as well as the national law, national adaptation or exemption or adaptation that have been made, and as well, they should focus as well in the traditional methods and artisan methods of production versus industrial way. Those training programs, from my point of view, should be compulsory to avoid that those not interested, those official inspectors not interested in those issues to attend those training programs. So they should be compulsory, as well as monitorized or audit. Once you have been trained, there should be official inspectors to the official inspector to be aware, to be sure that those things that have been trained, that you have been explained there, you apply that. So by means of audit or by means of monitoring, there should be some control of the official inspectors applying flexibility procedures. As well as official inspector, we have to take into account the food business operator, the small producer. By means of associations or organizations or sector organizations, there should be, or there are some organizations with specific training programs. Those training programs, from my point of view, should focus mostly in the possibilities of flexibility for their own or for their specific activity, dairies, meat, or something like that, and to propose solutions. But it's not enough, because food business operator need to be accompanied, need some help from expert to apply those things that you have learned in your specific business. So training program for small producers. If you need, ask for help to the competent authority to promote those training programs, and experts should accompany, should help a small producer to apply what they have learned.
Okay, thank you so much, Angel. I know that the difference in some countries is very much given by the existence or not of chambers of agriculture in the country, and we're seeing this more and more from the EU4Advice project. But you can see that there's something that we maybe need to spotlight to the Commission and to the national authorities, because we can find this every time we try working on anything to do with short food supply chain advising. Christian, would you like to say something?
Yeah, regarding this training of the inspectors, from the Austrian experience, it's always a challenge, on the one hand, to keep a certain level of training and understanding from the authority side, from the official side, but to keep it harmonized with what on the other side is told and advised to practitioners. So this informal world to as a kind of a clearing unit to talk on specific cases or on problems and to maintain that both sides talk on, about the same things and the same rules is crucial. To give an experience from the very beginning, we had our newly published official guidelines, and the inspectors had their own guidelines, which were not in line, which was officially published by the ministry. So we had conflicts. We discovered this, and then said, no, we have to work on the same level. And in the meantime, it works. But that's one of its crucial aspect. And to reach this, you have to have a kind of organization structure on the practitioner side. So as may be an association or a chamber or whatever. Without a representation, you are not existing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Christian. Okay, I'd like to know what Margaux has to say about this, please.
First, I totally agree with Christian on that, and to keep it harmonized to a certain level also for the inspectors with the guidelines. That's why I was talking about the fact that we try to acknowledge as soon as possible also the administration when we have technicians on working with farmers that say, oh, in this control we had this interpretation, etc. So that's why it's so important. And then the administration, I mean, I hope they're also trying to acknowledge the inspectors on the matters we acknowledge them. But to answer the question now, quickly, in the chambers of agriculture, so on a national level, technicians are in all regions. We have an internal training program. We want to instructors to intervene that are specialized on certain aspects, hygiene, but also sales, retail, etc. A juridic aspect. So we have this internal training program. And as a network and as a coordinator, a national coordinator, I try to gather this network and make it alive, to develop the skills by also sharing the experiences of the technicians. And this is very important also to the sharing experiences to develop the skills of the technicians. And also we have works with the RMT, alimentation locale, local alimentation, for short food supply chain alimentation. We also have workshops, and we also share our experiences and develop our skills in this matter, for sure.
Okay, thank you so much. So let's see how much we can use of all that, Margaux, because not everybody has this kind of fluent, communication between the different actors in the sector, and also the documents that can help. Françoise, I know that you said already in the chat about some of the documents you manage. Would you like to say something, or shall we go to the questions and answers? What do you think?
Pour peut-être compléter Margaux, nous avons des difficultés à faire reconnaître les spécificités des ateliers et des producteurs fermiers par rapport aux artisans. C'est un peu nous compliqué en France.
Just to complete Margaux, so they have difficulties to make recognizing the differences between local processing units on farms and artisans or craft food processors.
Mm-hmm.
Ils ont beaucoup de guides de bonne pratique. Et nous avons des difficultés à trouver des financements pour dire que les producteurs fermiers ne fonctionnent de manière différente.
There are a lot of good practice guides, but they have a lot of difficulties to make understand that the local processing unit on farms, the farmer processors, have different methods and way of working.
Et que leur statut est différent. Voilà.
Their status is different.
Yes. Right, very interesting. Okay, because you also have the artisan structure and the local, because this is something that we haven't discussed because we were only talking about hygiene really, but it's interesting how in some countries local has already had its own, let's say, sphere of regulation or exemption, and not in every country. Then that can be or could be, let's see what everybody thinks. The focus of another meeting, because it's really interesting. It's happening in Italy, for instance. It's happening in France, and we know that other countries also are going there and trying to distinguish local from artisan or traditional, and the exceptions are coming from different with different, let's say, reasons or basis, but it's really interesting because they open other opportunities for local producers and for small producers. So let's see if we can go into that in another session. Okay, we don't have much time left, I'm afraid. It always happens. We only have a little 7 minutes to discuss, and we have quite a lot of questions in the chat. So please, Marta, can you help me?
Yes,
with the
I
questions?
will read
And
the
introduce
first one.
yourself, please, Marta, because I didn't even introduce you. I'm terrible. Sorry.
No worries. Well, and maybe if we don't have enough time, we could answer or speakers could answer by email, maybe.
Okay.
Okay, the first question was for Christian, and it is from Hans. Does the exception mean that show food supply chain does not have to comply with the new regulation of showing the origin of where the product comes from? And does this apply to show food supply chain as well, or is this exempted?
That's a complete different legal issue. It's the so-called FIC regulation 1169 of 2011, where all the labeling issues are covered, and one specific chapter is dealing with origin labeling. Regarding origin labeling, there are some principal rules. If the primary ingredient is, in the case of a farm processed product from the farm, there is no, and you indicate where the product is coming from, that it's from the Jochum farm, there is no need to specifically additionally indicate the origin of the primary ingredient. If, what also happens in practice, some ingredients are bought in from outside, like processed fruits for yogurt, then you have to indicate this origin in the same way as the big industry has to do it. If you indicate this yogurt as your farm-based yogurt. But that's not hygiene and not food safety, it's labeling, and labeling is a huge world based on the FIC regulation 1169 of 2011.
May I add something on that? Sorry, Christian. Because I wanted to say that also fish is a very specific food product. For fishery, we also have additional requirements.
Fish is a completely different world. That's with the fishing, fish catching area. That's and the Latin name. So
yeah,
that's another legal world.
Yes, the person who made this question is from the fisheries.
Yeah, and fish is again a different labeling world.
Okay. Now a question from Françoise Morizot-Braud. Liability in France, and this is for Christian as well. Liability in France includes consumer misuse. Is that the same interpretation for you?
This consumer misuse, or I guess the idea is misleading consumers. It's again a matter of the 1169 regulation, the consumer information. There are some principles laid down in 178 in the general food law, but the detailed regulation is this consumer food information to consumer regulation. and this is also covering SFSCs because it's not fair and not allowed that SFSCs mislead consumers.
I can maybe intervene because it's to complete François' question. It's not about the labeling. It's about when in your risk management, in your risk assessment, you have to think that the consumer will have a misuse in the food. For example, here in France,
cold chain, like the cold chain.
Like the cold chain, like in France, we have pork. I don't have to say it.
Not cook. Not cook, or it had to be cooked, yes.
Yes, some pork pieces that are not sufficiently cooked, and sometimes they also eat it raw. And so now in France, they demand that the producer it can in his risk management assessment it has to take in mind this kind of misuse by the consumer. So, for example, with listeria, with the microbiological analysis, is it the same for you?
Yeah, but again, it's a labeling issue. So to instruct the consumer how the product has to be stored and eaten or processed or cooked correctly. So if you know that pieces of pork meat are not sufficiently heated or heat treated in a preserve, then you have, like the big industry, make a labeling. Only has to be eaten or cooked before eating or something like that, similar like that.
Okay, I will continue. This is from Margaux from Netherlands for Christian. In Austria, which intervention was decisive in ensuring that local inspectors apply the same interpretation, the same proportional interpretation everywhere?
On the one hand, the guidelines are official guidelines, so they cannot be ignored or neglected by the inspectors, theoretically. Practically, the main point is to keep contact with your regional inspector. But again, this demands on the side of practitioners and organizations and persons, which in the case of Austria are advisors from the regional chamber of agriculture, and they keep contact with their inspectors and try to clarify whatever comes up if there is a problem or uncertainty or something new which never happened before, etc.
Okay. Again, for Christian from Petri Muj from Finland, you use pre-compliant documents. Maybe I guess that's what. What is your understanding? Do the producers really read the document and understand what they sign?
If it's combined with training units, what we did not just provide this pre-written form. We combined it with specific training units for dairy processing, meat processing, etc. So just to teach the very few crucial principles like heating, like acidation, etc. Then it works. But I agree, just giving a practitioner a paper and please sign it and that's it, that's not enough.
Okay. Mehmet Can Yilmaz asks, who are the targets of the online hygiene knowledge tests? I don't know if it was Christian speaking about that, the hygiene knowledge.
The target is that, as I mentioned, persons who regularly are dealing with food processing, they have to be trained regularly. And we developed an online training course. We have these training days. That's one part with, I think it's every 3 years. And we developed in parallel this online format to reduce the time, the burden, so that you can absolve it in 30 minutes. And this online course, which was developed almost 20 years ago, is officially recognized by the authorities.
Okay. Patricia, I don't know, maybe because I have more questions, but it's already 10:30. I don't know if you want to continue, or we can try to answer by email. Is Patricia there? Yeah. Patricia, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. Yes, we have a question by Mark. He's working with several collective farmers, local communities, and advisors, and he wants to know if if the food production and consumption is done within the same legal entity, Farm to Fork Cooperative, for instance, do we still need to be compliant to H1 and H2? I understand, yes. No, always compliant to H1 or H2 is needed, but if you want to answer. Any of you? Also he also says, and also from a catering partnership, could this be a smart bypass? I don't know what you mean by bypassing, Mark, but hygiene rules are not bypassed. Okay, so Christian, would you like to answer?
If it's really a legal entity where a group of consumers produces its own food and processes and cooks it within their own premises, so to say, like an enhanced farm family, theoretically it would be outside the coverage of H1, because H1 says everything which is for self-sufficiency, like in your family, etc., is not covered by regulation. But if you have a group, cooperative members, 50 or 100, I guess that formally lawyers would say, no, that's it is covered, and practically I would not recommend it, because if it's too many persons, you should be able to assure that food safety is reached.
Okay. We still have another 2 or 3 comments. I'm really sorry, but I don't really want to extend any more the time. There are a few questions that are addressed to the French, and Detelda is providing or explaining they have training material, which we were so happy to receive. So anybody here who knows about training material that can be relevant to this theme, please, it would be great to have it and to share it if it's possible, so we can make the best of it. It's one of the targets of our project is to make it reach all the farmers and the advisors in short food supply chain as possible. So please do help us. And then Barbara Hart is talking about the FACE network, Farmhouse and Artisan Cheese and Dairy Producers European Network, and who have also developed training materials and a guide of good hygiene practices. So any of these we will be so welcome. So I'm afraid this is our time. I'm really happy to have so many people providing interesting insights and giving good ideas. So Christian?
Yeah, maybe we could take the opportunity and to announce the next Advisinar, which takes place on the 16th of February, organized by the COREnet project team, and dealing with the issue of sharing facilities and infrastructure to reduce costs. That's a completely different issue. Maybe somebody of you is interested in that topic. Sharing facilities. So 16th of February, it's a Monday, Advisors Monday, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, thank you so much, Christian. That's giving us the advertising moment. Looking forward to seeing you all there. And if there's anybody else you think could be interested, please do tell them about our webinars. Advisinars. It's a new concept, but it's going to have a lot of impact in the future, so keep it. And then also, I would like to say that we will be contacting you to provide you with the slides, with the questions that are being answered, and hopefully to invite you to register as an advisor or policymaker in our network, or also to be able to provide us with your evaluation of the session. So thank you so much to all of you. It's been a real pleasure, and hopefully we'll meet again in your Advising us.